Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday Night Principal Chiro broadcast sponsored by DE and Band of Brothers around the world. Got a special guest tonight. Everybody knows him. Nothing really I can say about him, but everybody loves Peter Amlinger from Mississauga, Toronto. I don't know. He's in from Canada. But I was asking Pete before we jumped on. He's been going on to DE, coming to DE for 35 years. And I said, tell me something about you that nobody may not know. He's an identical twin. Had no idea. And he said he's proven that that if you use your environment, you can change. He is an example of, by dealing with his environment, his health and his life is different than his identical twin. So it's really not about genetics. It's about what you do with your genetics. And I'm sure he'll get something really deep for us. I've been so excited to listen to Pete tonight. But before we turn over to Pete, let's remind you, DE is April 10th through the 13th in beautiful Clearwater Beach, Florida, at the Sheraton Sandy Key Beach Resort. I think the deadline is March 18th. So make sure you get your rooms, get your hotels, get your flights all booked up, because this is going to be an awesome DE. Again, reach out to your teams. Reach out to your teams. I'm with Purple Team, and I missed last meeting because I had a health issue. I couldn't come, and I missed the connection. And so we need to make sure we're staying connected. And if you have any celebrations, reach out to your Purple Team or your Yellow Team or your Orange Team, whatever. Reach out and let's celebrate our wins. And if we have troubles, let's reach out to people to make sure that we can help you out through your loss or your struggles. Okay. So again, the next one is April 10th through the 13th. Then we got the summer one back in Atlanta, July 17th through the 20th, and then the fall back in Atlanta again. So with no further ado, let's bring on Pete. Pete, take it over, brother. Love you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Andy, and I love you too. The correct pronunciation is Mississauga. I think going forward, Tracy and I moved to a town west of Mississauga called Stratford, Ontario, where Steve LaFay lives and practices, and Cassie. So maybe we'll just go with Stratford from now on, because I've been listening to people struggle with Mississauga for 35 years. And I've got a few things running through my head. It's been an interesting week so far. It started out literally with our dog shitting the bed on Saturday night rather, and then again last night. And I was driving to the office this morning, and a beautiful coyote popped out in front of me when I was about 5 minutes from my office. And coyote medicine, for those of you who study, is about combining folly and wisdom. The coyote is the animal that sits in the south, where we get tested and tricked. It's often called the trickster. So when our vision moves down to the south of the medicine wheel, or the healing circle, we can expect to be tested. So coyote showed up, our dog's crap in the bed. I get to the office this morning and I find out from Vinny that he had a fall yesterday and gouged his head and had to get some staples and stitches put in. And then at the end of the morning, I'm on my way to Taekwondo, and I find out that Tracy fell down the stairs off our deck today and banged herself up. She's okay. Didn't do it quite as good as Andy, but she banged herself up pretty good. So apparently I'm sitting in the south right now in the healing circle, and I'm being tested. And that's a beautiful thing, because we cannot grow in life without tests and without some adversity. So I welcome it, and we'll work through it. And maybe it will inform our talk tonight and the message that's going to come through me. And I've been thinking a lot, and I said to my CA today, or last week I said, our awareness determines our memory, right? Our value system determines our memory, because our value systems inform our awareness, and where our awareness goes is what we're putting our attention on it. That's what we will remember. So we can expand our awareness and expand our memory and expand our experience. And then today, because I got sucked in a couple times yesterday we just do not allow politics to be discussed in the clinic, but a couple people tried to suck me into it. And so this morning I said to Kenzie, our office manager, I said, until the world appreciates en masse that there's only one consciousness, we're screwed. And I stand by that statement. And so tonight I want to talk about this consciousness, and especially as it's relevant to chiropractic. And so I did a podcast for somebody a few weeks ago, and I think that person enjoys using the term vitalism and vitalistic. And I don't enjoy the term vitalism. I don't enjoy the phrase vitalistic chiropractic. So I went, me being me, I said, I'm going to look up the definition of these words. And so vitalism is defined, dictionary definition of vitalism, the theory that the origin and phenomena of life are dependent upon a principle distinct from purely chemical or physical forces. I find that's kind of beige for me. It doesn't really light my fire. Vitalistic, a doctrine that the functions of a living organism are due to a vital principle distinct from physiochemical forces, that life is not explained by physics and chemistry alone, and that life is somehow self-determining. I think it's pretty weak. Vitalistic chiropractic, a preventative type of medicine that seeks to heal the entire body by allowing the nervous system to communicate without disruption by removing blockages. That's downright nauseating to me. So on the other hand, when I look at the definition of chiropractic in the books I read, and this is one of my favorite passages, you all probably have heard it before, but Innate told me to read it tonight, and it's not long. And it's chapter 11, From Bigness of the Fellow Within, This Inner Power Speaks. We chiropractors work with the subtle substance of the soul. We release the prisoned impulse, the tiny rivulet of force that emanates from the mind and flows over the nerves to cells and stirs them into life. We deal with the magic power that transforms common food into living, loving, thinking clay, that robes the earth with beauty and hues and scents the flowers with the glory of the air. In the dim, dark, distant, long ago, when the sun first bowed to the morning star, this power spoke, and there was life. It quickened the slime of the sea and the dust of the earth, and drove the cell to union with its fellows in countless living forms. Through eons of time, it finned the fish and winged the bird and fanged the beast. Endlessly it worked, evolving its forms until it produced the crowning glory of them all. With tireless energy, it blows the bubble of each individual life, and then silently, relentlessly dissolves the form and absorbs the spirit into itself again. And yet you ask, can chiropractic cure appendicitis or the flu? Have you more faith in a knife or a spoonful of medicine than in the innate power that animates the internal living world? And not just the innate power, because if we take it back to the outer power, the universal power, the major premise that we work with, a universal intelligence exists in all matter, giving matter its property and characteristics, thus maintaining an existence. That's sexy compared to vitalism or a vitalistic chiropractic. And, I've been contemplating the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle lately, which says 80% of all outcomes are derived by 20% of causes. So that means 80% of the results in your life, whether it's in your personal life or in your relationship or in your office, 80% of the results are the result of 20% of your actions. 20% of your thoughts produce 80% of your results. And so what we too commonly do is we focus on the 80% that aren't producing the results instead of the 20% that do. And we have to learn to strip away the 80% and focus on the 20%, not get distracted from that. And when I look at chiropractic and what's going on in the world of chiropractic today and what's going on, some of the questions that are asked on chiropractic pages and whatnot, if you will, about who's, I'm like, we seem to be, instead of stripping it down and looking at the 20% to make it stronger and more pure and more powerful, we're adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And as chapter 11 in Bigness points out to us, it's enough on its own. It's more than enough on its own. And in fact, anytime you try to add something to this principle, you in fact weaken it. And it doesn't mean there's other good things out there. It's just not chiropractic. And I think if we want to increase the results in our office, if we start there, and then our impact as a profession, we need to start looking at what creates most of the results in our offices. And in my view, what creates the results is an understanding of this principle through relentless study and its application by mastering the art of the detection, analysis, and correction of subluxation through the adjustment so that that individual can express more of their innate intelligence over time. And if we try to add anything else to that, we're weakening it. Our only other obligation in our office to educate the patient about the magnificence of this intelligence. You know, and I had a little guy come in. He is 7 years old. He wets the bed. He has a headache almost every day of his life. And his mom brings him in and we adjust him last week, and he comes in today, hasn't had a headache since his first adjustment. He only wet the bed once. One adjustment, turning the power on one time, nothing else. An Atlas adjustment, nothing else. And the kid's life is changing already because he's connected to source. And so I want to challenge everyone tonight to challenge themselves to look at what they're doing in their lives and in their offices and really sit and think about what is the 20% that's making the major result. And then commit to moving away from that other 80%. And it's not necessarily going to be easy. It might be stressful. You know, there's a concept out there called anti-fragility versus fragility. And so anti-fragility, if we apply it to an idea, anti-fragility means that if we scrutinize an idea, that idea becomes more self-evident, more crystal clear, more concrete, the more we scrutinize it. That's our principle. The more I scrutinize this principle over the 40 years I've been in practice, the more self-evident becomes, the more clear it becomes, the more simple the application of the principle seems to become, the more powerful the adjustment seems to become, because we've stripped it down and taken away the thoughts in here from past programming, from fear, from limiting beliefs that put a veil over my ability to really receive and appreciate the principle in its entirety, in its depth, in its completeness. And so, you know, I know for me, and I've asked this question in the past, and And so if I had the person I love most in the world laying in front of me, in trouble, desperate, and I could only choose one thing in that moment to do for them, I would absolutely choose to check them and specifically adjust them. And I'm going to tell you, it probably wouldn't be at T7. It would be where the subluxation is. But as I've looked at my protocol and my analysis, and BJ talked about majors and minors. And so as you really sit and think about it, where we put the force in, can we narrow that down and say, I'm going to limit my application of force to 20%? Where would it be? And I'm going to tell you, most of the time it's going to be up here, not all the time. So we need to have a protocol that looks at the entire nervous system, but we want it to be ultra specific, and we want to take the less is more approach. And so when we look at anti-fragility, there's an experiment done in the States years ago, and it was called Biosphere 2. So they created this complete environment. It was supposed to be self-perpetuating. It was like in a bubble of sorts. And so it was a micro environment. It had all the water. It had all the elements. It would grow its own food. The trees would be self-sustaining, and they had about 8 people living in there, I think. And it didn't last very long. And what they found was the trees grew really fast, but before they reached maturity, they would just fall over. So these trees are living in an environment where there's no wind, there's no soil erosion, and they grow fast and they fall over. And it's because they didn't have any stress. They were fragile in that environment. Whereas when we look at trees in nature, if you look at a tree that's growing and that's exposed to wind, if the wind's blowing this way, the roots on the windward side of the tree will develop and grow stronger and thicker and deeper to anchor the tree into the earth. The trunk of the tree will flex and bend, and the wood will get stretched. The fibers will get stretched on the outside of the bend on the windward side, but on the leeward side, the wood will get more dense and stronger. They call it stress wood, and it indicates that the tree has been exposed to the stress of the wind and successfully adapted to it. So how many in our profession look at a curve on an x-ray and they say, that could be stress wood. Being up, didn't sleep last night because of the dog. Taking care of my dog, didn't sleep. That's stress wood. That's making me better. And I went in this morning tired and worn out, and I took care of my people. And I had the gift of this little boy coming in, being able to tell me he didn't have a headache all week, and he only peed the bed once. Fantastic, right? So we have to be, as we look at our life and our practices and how we apply chiropractic, what are you doing in your office other than locating, analyzing, adjusting subluxation so that person can express more of their innate intelligence and express more life and express more of their infinite potential? What are you adding to it? Because I'm telling you right now, if you're adding to it, you're watering it down. And when I look at we look at our institutions out there, how many of our institutions are watering it down, adding stuff to it? I don't even want to try to figure out the why. All I know is we've got this magnificent principle that when applied, changes lives and saves lives. Palmer's Law of Life. We're DE chiropractors, so we understand as well that what happens inside a person when they become humble to the presence of God within themselves and they become obedient to that will. And they take that state of being and apply our wonderful principle through lasting purpose. And now more than ever before, the world needs our message. It needs it delivered in a DE manner, and it needs a bunch of people who are expressing lasting purpose love everywhere they go in their community. And they need us to help understand and bring everyone. See, as I started out, if we can appreciate that there's only one consciousness, it means we're all connected. And we're seeing all this posturing and stuff going on in the world, and it's a competitive. In negotiation, they call it distributive negotiation versus integrative negotiations. And in distributive negotiations, there's a winner and a loser. So you go in to buy a new car and you want to beat the salesperson down to get the best price possible. Versus an integrated approach where we're all here supporting one another, as our Indigenous brothers and sisters teach us, that we're all related. We're related to everything on this planet, animate and inanimate. And we're all here to support and guide one another through our journey here. And we're all on the same journey, and that's to move towards unconditional love, towards oneness, where we can feel the interconnected nature of all life, where we can go out in nature and have nature speak to us, just as the elders did, where we can feel what one another are thinking and feeling without having to say it to one another. It's possible. And we need to start seeing the world as Sid always admonished us to do, see the world as it should be, not as it is. And how many of us right now are looking at the world and we're looking at the chaos in the world? And we're looking at what's wrong in the world. We're looking at how subluxated people are. And the more we look at that and the more we bring that into our awareness, that becomes our memory. It also becomes our future. So we have to look at our patients as they come in as perfect and complete and fully connected before we even lay a hand on them. We need to walk around our town seeing everybody living in harmony. We need to see the churches full, the hospitals empty, the prisons empty. We need to see the streams running with clear, crystal clear, clean, pure water. We need to see the forests healthy and green and vital, pouring oxygen into the... We need to see the world as it should be. And then go out and apply our principle and deliver our message, one person at a time, one adjustment at a time. Knowing that it doesn't mean there's not going to be any stress. We got to start teaching people that they're not fragile, that they're anti-fragile, and that they need stuff in their life to challenge them to grow. And we do that by being examples, by constantly challenging us to grow, by constantly refining the 20% that we're thinking about and that we're acting on to produce greater and greater and greater results. So we can have a more massive impact on humanity. We need to get more people to dynamic essentials. We need to get together between meetings. We need to stay connected. We need to study these green books. 40 years in practice, still reading them, still studying them, still learning from them, still revealing their wisdom to me. And we have to sometimes make tough choices. Sometimes, you know, it's about, well, I got to stop hanging out with that guy because he's just a bad influence on me. And that's part of the 80%. I got to stop watching that stuff because that's part of the 80%. I got to shut off the TV. I've got to not talk politics. I've got to, like, you know, turn off the TV at the beginning of the Super Bowl this weekend and sit in silent meditation and contemplate the world as it should be, instead of watching some game where the refs have been bought and we know that Mahomes is going to get a couple calls just to make Harding happy. But at the end of the day, watching that game is and I'm going to watch it, I'm going to be honest, and I have LaFay over and we're going to eat moose chili, and it's going to be, the game will be a colossal waste of time to watch, but the camaraderie and the love that our families will share together will be well worth the time invested. So my message going away is to think about the power and the purity and the completeness of our principle, and start looking at what you've been doing in your office and say, you know, literally start stripping away that anything that's not 100% incongruent, or strip away anything that's not 100% congruent with the principle. Take it out of your office. I was telling somebody the story of Sigafus when he took the modalities out of his office, and the guy came in with the sinus problem and he was putting some device on his head. So Sigafus walked outside, walked down the stairs, picked it up, brought it in, gave it to the guy. The guy came back sometime later with burn marks on his head and still had a sinus condition. So it's time to start telling the truth in our offices, delivering the goods, and getting rid of anything else that's not 100% with our principle. And if you do it, your influence, the change you will make in people's lives, will increase astronomically. And if you do it with a loving heart and you're given for the sake of giving and serving for the sake of serving, you will be well looked after. And I'm not saying to be irresponsible in other ways, but just focus on the service piece of it, and focus on mastering your art and the understanding of this principle, and watch what happens in your life. Andy's, I've been coming 35 years this July. My first DE, I went home 3 weeks later, my practice doubled. It went from 230 to 450 in 3 weeks. And the only thing that changed was me. And if I can do it, you can do it. So let's go do it. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Have a great night, y'all.
Pete, that was deep, my man. I appreciate it. So here's my notes, just kind of synopsize, right? One consciousness, love, right?
Amen.
If we can all take one thing you said for us to do is try to get quiet and find out what our 20% is, that's the maximum of our potential, and focus on that, and without distractions. And that was beautiful, without distraction. And less is more, and how the stress wood works, and how it, the more the stress makes us stronger. And, if we add anything, we're watering it down. And by God, the world doesn't need to water down chiropractic. Chiropractic doesn't need to water ourselves down. So beautiful. And I guess the last thing I saw is that it's fixed. Chiefs going to win. So bet all your house on the Chiefs, right? Woohoo! No, serious, man. I love you. It was deep. It was powerful. Everybody, take some time to look at your 20%, focus on your 20%, and try to stay without distractions, and stay in that lasting purpose lifestyle, and our lives will be better. Go Chiefs. Love you, man. Thanks so much.
Love you too. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you guys next week. Love y'all.